Welcome to everyone. Today, topic is biodiversity in inclusive finance, or inclusive biodiversity finance. I think is a quite interesting topic and not explored enough. So we would like to bring that up into the agenda, as well as showing you some of the example of things that has been done and things that we would like to do. As maybe various of you knows, also in the conventional finance sector, there are activities that are going on. For example, the Task Force for Nature Disclosure. It is about biodiversity and ecosystem. That is the friends, the cousin, or the brother of the most famous one for climate disclosure. And I think this topic is very important for inclusive finance, as we will see in a second why. So together with us, we have myself, as you already see me, Just Institute Davide Forcella, Alexandre Nayme from the BNP Paribas, but we also have other 3 speakers that I'm going to introduce in a second that are online, 2 in presential, and 1 with a video that is going to share an experience of a project that has been implemented on this topic. Let me introduce them in a second. So you see this picture, biodiverse, nice. What we want to do is also this one, is how to engage local population to promote, as well as promote biodiversity, as well as reduce the risk of biodiversity erosion. So how do we integrate social and economic activity by smallholder and rural communities so that we can preserve biodiversity and get out of that livelihood? Here is our panel. So let me introduce. I think we have online Avril Benchimol from the Global Environmental Facilities. Can we have a sign that she's online? Because I cannot see her. Is she online? Just to be sure. Regia is online. So it's online. Then we have our Pedro Marchetti, that someone of you maybe knows, founder of the Fondo de Desarrollo Local en Nitlapan in Nicaragua, that will tell us a bit about his experience. Avril, here are you. And Peter, good morning to everyone, to both of you, from Washington, I think, and from Guatemala City.
From Honduras today.
You move. But still Central America. Good morning, Avril. Voila, and then we have, coming back to the presentation, please. We have a presentation. And then we have Alexandre Nayme here with us, with BNP Paribas, less exotic from Paris. Ricardo Segovia, I think he's connected, but he's not gonna speak, but he was so kind to send us a video about his experience from El Salvador ACI, and myself. So we start with a small introduction, maybe to lay the foundation, try to avoid confusion, even if confusion sometimes are good, because there are synergies, for example, between climate and biodiversity, a bit laying the ground what biodiversity is. I'm not pretending to say something as a specialist, but to give you an orientation of what we are considering. Biodiversity comes from the sum of 2 words, bio and diversity, that basically means the diversity of life. Yeah? And of course, as you think about that, is a key principle. Life is what we belong to and what we are. We are alive, likely. And diversity is what makes ourselves resilient. Yeah? So of course, it's a key topic for basically our life on Earth. There you see the definition. We are not going to go through in detail. You can read it. The key topic is what is useful for. That means a selfish approach, but we will take, as Guy from Finance, a selfish approach to say what is used for us. It's useful for many things: disaster resistance, food and water supply, medication, industrial and building material, technological progress, better crop variety, shelter and food for animals, ecosystem services, nutrient recycling, pollination, provision of fertile soil, cooling, etc., carbon sequestration, recreation, culture, and aesthetic value. So basically, it's who we are. Yeah? And unfortunately, we are going to lose it. Yeah? That's a key problem we have. And I also would like to say we are going to lose it, or lose a big part of that. And we will do it also independently for climate change. Yeah? That means the 2 things are they have a strong relation, but one will be there, the problem of climate change and biodiversity losses, even without the other one. So we need to tackle them in coordination, but also considering that there are two different problems. What we're going to speak today about is not biodiversity. It's a huge topic. We're going to speak about agro-biodiversity. What this agro-biodiversity is, is the component of biodiversity that contributes to agriculture, by definition. Crop, livestock, forestry, aquaculture system, and harvest species also in production ecosystem. It's a bit subtle topic, of course, because one of the key driver for biodiversity losses is agriculture. So the idea is, can we find a compromise between our agriculture production and access to food and restoration of biodiversity? So its conservation, of course, is influenced by key items that make the specific active management of farms. Farmers basically are the ones that own the local biodiversity and ecosystem, local knowledge and culture, and sustainable practices. So it's really something locally led. Its benefits, of course, are huge. Higher biodiversity, increased productivity, food security, economic return, sound pest and disease management, key topic, of course, for any agricultural production, diversity of production, and reduced dependencies on external input. So you see, is a relevant topic. Now, some numbers, of course, a lot of is written. We will also distribute the slide, but I think it's important. I think there are not too many talks on biodiversity yet, unfortunately. Why we need to focus on that? Beyond what we state, that of course make it very material and essential for our life, why that is important in this moment. 75% of terrestrial environment are severely altered by human action. Productivity in the land is reduced. There are pollination services that basically, you know what it is at risk. Of course, I don't like in general to quantify in dollars or euro ecosystem services, but at least give us an amount of how big is the services for our daily life. Between 100 and 300 million of species that are exposed to increased risk of floods or hurricanes, more than 1 million species at risk. And of course, as we know, there are two key items. The poorest, that are the most dependent one from ecosystem and biodiversity, are the ones that will be more affected to this loss, and already are. But that's not ending there, because as maybe various of you knows, our economy means not just the inclusive finance economy, our big economy strongly depend on nature. At least half of our production in terms of economy depend on that, order of 44 trillions. So it means there's a lot of stuff here. And of course, there are also interesting simple things. Deforestation is linked to higher malaria rates. That clearly is a big problem. Women, production agriculture, 80% of the food locally and done by women. Yeah? 2 words again on what it's about. Of course, because biodiversity is a bit broad. If you want to make it material, we have 5 main pressure items that contribute to destroy biodiversity. One of that is climate change, yeah, clearly, but you have other 4 that will be there also if climate change is not there. Land use change, key things, invasive foreign and alien species, pollution and overexploitation. These are the drivers that destroy biodiversity locally and globally, and are the ones that we have or would like to tackle. 2 words again. What can we do? It's a complex topic. There are experience in agro-biodiversity. For example, a big topic that is up nowadays is about nature-based solution, is how do we use nature to improve ecosystem services, to improve productivity, value of the production, at the same time preserve biodiversity and support adaptation to climate change. In simple way, there are complex practices, but also more complicated ones, also more simple ones, like for example, family gardens, organic fertilizer, conservation agriculture, organic agriculture, efficient stoves, ecotourism, mixed nursery, wind breaks, biodigester, crop diversification, very simple, beekeeping, seed banks. So just to make you the thing a bit familiar. That's a part of nature-based solution that could support biodiversity, restoration, and avoid losses. 2 words before giving the floor to Riccardo with the video that is gonna show you an actual, I'm gonna say in 2 words what it's gonna show you. Before going to that, I just want to state a couple of words about experiences. We do far away to do enough on biodiversity, that's pretty clear. and also in particular in the inclusive finance sector. Nevertheless, it's not something that has never been done. There is already experiences out of which we would like to capitalize. One of the first projects I know, and just listening some, is this project called Proyecto Cambio. By the way, FDL and Nitlapan was involved into that, so maybe we'll hear something from Pedro. That was a project quite interesting, 2008-2015, so dating quite some time back, with some money mobilized in loans for biodiversity, 56 millions in biodiversity-friendly activities, some of the ones we have been discussing in the Corridoio Seco, in the Mesoamerican corridor that links North America with South America, passing through the Central America, where is a hotspot of biodiversity, with more than 2 million technical assistants in 5 countries and 26 financial institutions, working with more than 25,000 micro, small, and medium enterprises, banking sector and microfinance there. So that, of course, we are learning. There is another project that you heard from my side and from other more recently. It's called MEBA. That project, actually, by the way, was sponsored by the GEF that we have online. Yeah. And UNDP and the BESIE is the Central Bank for Central American Development. The other project I want to highlight a bit is about MEBA. MEBA is another interesting project. So you see it's not an intervention by intervention, but both are sectorial projects that are quite large, long, and with quite some money. MEBA, Microfinance for Ecosystem-Based Adaptation, 35 million of private money disbursed for ecosystem-based adaptation practices, some of the one I illustrated above, so agroforestry, drip irrigation, etc. With more than 5 million in technical assistance, working on 9 countries in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, and with around 20,000 smallholder farmers. Of course, are relatively big, but still so small compared to what we need to achieve. And then there was other evolution. So there was a follow-up of MEBA focus on biodiversity. So to highlight the part on ecosystem that support biodiversity conservation, was training on that for various loan officers, and together with some of the people present here, so the BNP Paribas, the Fondation Crédit Agricole, the CD, the Fondation, the Microfinance BBVA, and Oicocredit, we have been using some of the learning out of this project MEBA, plus the Green Index that some of you heard, to start to develop certain indicator that we can, out of which we can help financial institutions to support their progressing toward climate change adaptation and biodiversity conservation. I will close in a second. What this project did was financing, specific for certain nature-based solution. It was about guarantees, certain of them. It was about technical assistance to understand, to support the institution to understand how to assess biodiversity risk and define which solution should be financed on which condition. And the Proyecto Cambio is an interesting financial tools that will be explained also by Pedro. That is about payment for ecosystem services. So it's a reward if you progress in terms of biodiversity conservation. So I stop here, and I will in a second give the voice to the video of ACI from Ricardo to make a concrete example of things that has been done. And this is a simple example. ACI, you will see, is a small institution. We've been selecting ACI and Ricardo to speak about their experience to show that complex things like that can also be done by small institutions. And you will see an interesting topic is, first of all, to understand what I'm actually financing that could be recognized as biodiversity friendly, and what is my risk in terms of biodiversity risk. So you will see from ACI an experience to screen their portfolio with the tool provided by the MEBA Biodiversity platform, and to see, can we have an idea of how I'm affected by these 5 pressure points on biodiversity, and which one of the solution that could be listened to restore biodiversity am I financing, and then can I then build, and then work on progress, an action plan to progress. So we stop here. I give the voice to Ricardo, and I will need now that I close here and I show you the video. The video, unfortunately, is a bit long. It's 10 minutes. I asked for 3. That's the shortest we have. You know, I'm Latin, he's Latin, and then you will see Pedro as well. So we take some time to speak. Voilà. So just a sec. Ricardo. Voilà.
Greetings to all. of you. My name is Ricardo Segovia, founder and chairman of the board of directors. Today I have the pleasure of presenting the experience of biodiversity in our institution ASEI in the last 2 years. On today's agenda is the following: a brief presentation of ASEI, our experience with the MEVA biodiversity platform, which is an initiative financed by the United Nations, BNP Paribas, and the German Ministry of the Environment, and developed by JAPO. About El Salvador. First, we are located in Central America with a population of 6.5 million inhabitants. We started in 1990. That means more than 30 years working with the base of the pyramid. That means people in need. Our strategy is defined by giving our clients a holistic service of credits, education, health, and environment. We already have 24,900 clients, 2,900 of them in the agriculture sector, that means 12% of the total. We have a portfolio of almost 16 millions with 2.2 millions of that portfolio dedicated to agriculture activities. And we have different methodologies. Our focus being group lending, especially village banks, solidarity groups, ADESCOs, and individual credits. We have 242 employees, 12 agencies, and 5 health clinics, as you can see in the map. Experience with MEVA biodiversity platform and JAPO solution. In first place, we have the experience in our awareness, and in the second place with the use of platform. In awareness, if we don't have awareness, it's very difficult to introduce any change, and the need of looking at the environment as a making biggest problem, biggest risk and problem. Why? Because we are dealing with the human needs and the future of mankind. Since 2011 to 2020, we were accustomed to be happy and comfortable in our routine to provide agricultural credit. It was at the end of 2020 when we were trained by JAPO Solution, and with it, we got a different vision and challenge. To deliver a green product with environment attributes. Our planet, our homes, our commitment is our agricultural slogan, so that we can create awareness with our clients and teams. The platform starts with the data collection in field and use data optimization for the analysis with different indicators. We will focus on the indicators of the biodiversity conservation to know the environmental diagnostic of our clients, which are the gap that we can give support, that we can give support to our clients and our field workers. What will be the roadmap for an appropriate solution in the community's environment in the short, medium, and long term? And our institutional position in relation to biodiversity conservation. The possible source of risk for a biodiversity conservation indicator are changes land, overexploitation, climate change, pollution, invasive alien species. All of this give us a level of institutional risk which can be high, medium, or low. Knowing these sources, we can suggest to our clients which one can reduce their biodiversity risk, as they have a medium level of institutional risk. This table gives us 17 solutions to promote biodiversity conservation. They have different impact levels from high to low. For example, conservation agriculture, beekeeping, and seed bank have a high impact level, while organic fertilizer and crop diversification have a medium and biodigester have a low impact. As we can see, the average biodiversity risk of a say is 35%. The higher the percentage, the higher the risk. Our greatest institutional risk is pollution. But 71% of the farmers have changed their land and use changed their land use from forest to agriculture. 14% of the farmers survived have their land in a protected area. This slide presents the EVA solution as a percentage of the amount disbursed and amount of client assessed. The two EVA solutions that our clients have used are crop diversification and integrated pest management. Our green credit percentage is 4%. In October 2020 to April 2021, we were training and practice with MEVA biodiversity platform with Yapo. 14 training sessions and 50 hours of training. Since January 2021, 1,708 loans have been assessed with almost 1 million of credit, agriculture credit. Lesson learned. These are the results of our experience. Our lesson learned with the results, the use of technology, and investor and lending institution. Number one, the overperformance indicator have indicators in the platform require immediate attention to improve the environmental performance of our clients. Going from the traditional way of planting to an environment outlook. For that to happen, the following is needed. An aggressive approach to environmental pronouncement worldwide. An open heart because the environment is a matter of life or death. For technology, number one, to promote and pronounce the need of having a tool or measuring index for a continuous improvement of agriculture environment in low income countries, and to increase the microfinance in the use of the platform around the world. That means to have an economy of scale. For investor and lending institution, the time is now. Life investment is the investment for the present and the future of humankind. Open your finance, challenge your institution to live the routine in a world in emergency. Be aware and adaptable. There are new opportunities to receive when you give in business. Keep going. All of you keep going in whatever you do, but transform to the vision of to make our world different. The future of the planet, of our planet, depends on you. Your engagement is very, 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 very urgent. Thank you. I am leaving here my information about any contact. Thank you.
Voila, so we can make a clap. Why is red when it's on? That's why I'm confused. Okay, what I was saying is that what I hope it provides as a view is that no matter which size you are, you can start looking into your biodiversity footprint and understand what you're financing and how you progress. And I think the message was pretty clear, and is clearly pragmatic approach that has been done. Of course, it's just the beginning of the journey. So thank you, Ricardo, for sharing this with us. We will now go on to the core of the panel, where we have our three speakers that are gonna basically answer two key questions, and we also would like to have your own contribution. The main topic of the panel from now on, after we introduce the topic, is what are financial instruments that can support financial inclusive biodiversity conservation. As said, we will have three different speakers, different backgrounds. So the GEF, Global Environmental Facility, and any financial institution, FEDL, and a bank, BNP Paribas. So we start maybe with Avril. That's the first question to you. So financial instruments from GEF to finance, inclusive finance, biodiversity conservation. So the floor is yours. Avril, thanks a lot to be with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and good morning. I would say good afternoon in Europe. And if there's someone joining us from Asia, good evening. So my name is Avril Benchimol, and I lead the Blended Finance Initiative at the Global Environment Facility, or the GEF. The GEF is the oldest environmental fund and mostly does the job, or gets its finances from donors and helps governments to fulfill their commitments under the different conventions. Right now, the UNFCCC is the COP is taking place in Sharm el Sheikh. There will be also the Biodiversity COP soon in December. So we help governments and we finance the actions that they do. However, not everything is done by governments, and there's a lot happening on the ground, a lot of entrepreneurs and initiatives and private sector actors and NGOs that are very close to, I would say, the impacts of climate change and nature loss, and therefore are more incentivized to do projects and find solutions. So the blended finance portfolio seeks to basically support not only the governments, but mostly the private sector actors, NGOs, financial intermediaries, fund managers that bring to the GEF any type of solution that is looking toward solving the environmental crisis. Specifically in biodiversity, what we're seeing in the blended finance portfolio is that most of the proposals we receive have a biodiversity component nowadays, which is very encouraging. That means that this aspect is entering the agenda of the different actors, private sector actors, but also financial intermediaries that seek to address and help with what is nature positive investments. Two answers, I would say, to this question. What we see is that although technical assistance is very important and is needed in grants to help change the activities or way of doing in agriculture, financial instruments are key to de-risk the different portfolios of the actors involved. So what we're seeing at the GEF is that most of the demand comes in the form of high risk instruments like junior equity, first loss guarantees, subordinated debt that would help the financial intermediaries or fund managers or private sector test the waters and invest in these nature positive investments. The second part to the question is that we are seeing that it's possible to structure combo products, so technical assistance, or even incentivize these types of activities with performance-based instruments that can be, again, sustainable linked loans, or it can be performance-based type of financing. And in the case of the GEF, Very specifically, what we've seen, for example, is the conservation to, for example, preserve species is together with the World Bank Group issued a rhino bond to support the conservation of this species, the black rhino, in 2 parks of South Africa. And you can have the investment appetite for that as long as, and that is a common theme across the board, you can generate adequate risk and return profiles for the actors involved. That can be the microfinance institution, it can be the corporate, it can be the institutional investor or the pension fund that sits in Wall Street or London, Paris, or wherever. So the big money is there to finance these operations as long as we have a good risk return profile for the projects. I will leave it there for my first answer. Thanks.
So thanks a lot, Avril, for this very complete introduction of what the GEF is doing. And again, as to said, the first project that I've been hearing about biodiversity conservation in inclusive finance has been sponsored by the GEF, also in inclusive finance. So that's, I think, it's a premier. We now move forward to Alex from the BNP Paribas, telling us same question: what are the financial instruments to finance inclusive finance and biodiversity conservation, and hence, or that will be soon developed? The floor is yours, Alex.
Thank you, Davide, and thanks everyone for having me. So, what is interesting from the standpoint of BNP Paribas is to look at what is already done by the more conventional financial sector. We know that banks are not very good at naturally protecting and conserving the biodiversity, but they are quite good at innovating and creating new financial products. We can see that the first efforts and the first forays in those sector have been by drawing and writing exclusion lists. So we are rather on the do not harm categories, of course. Then we had the sector policies, so looking at one particular sectors, and it's of course helps you to define what you want to finance and what you don't want to finance. Looking at particular subsector that are very sensitive for biodiversity. So it's mostly agriculture, forestry, and for instance for the bank it has been the paper and the pulp industry. You can of course have those sector policies with the focus on the protected areas and the zones that are biodiversity rich, such as wetlands, mangrove swamps, tropical forests, or coastal areas at at a more general level. So those sector policies are good if you want to engage clients in more sustainable practices, and it's rather a way to accompany them rather than exclude them. And I think it's an important message. Once you've integrate those do not harm policies, what we started to do, of course, is to have the do good ones, which are of course much more complicated to put in place. So having this more proactive approach, of course, and that's where your social and environmental impact bonds, such as the one that Avril mentioned. So these are the tripartite pay for success / outcome fund that you may be familiar with. You've got the famous sustainability linked loans, so that you may know as well. So it's a great way to incorporate some incentives into the funding that you are providing to your clients, and it's something which is already very well developed again in the conventional banking sector. The Association of Banks Worldwide has already defined guidelines in order to frame the way those type of products are supposed to be used. We believe that it's far from being enough, and that the indicators that are chosen are most often not targeting the most material topics, and that's we should always include not only biodiversity conservation but also social indicators. So what the one that we call the inclusive related indicators in the inclusive finance sector. You also have, of course, blended finance mechanisms to help to support, having this well looked for catalytic effects, of course. And then you've got the the thematic impact fund that are looking at one particular problematic, and of course as an investor you can either invest in debt or equity into those type of vehicles. So yeah, that would be my answer to the existing financial instruments.
Thanks a lot. I'm fighting with the microphone. Thanks a lot, Alex, for your input here from the private banking sector view. I'm now very pleased to give the word to Pedro Marchetti from FDL and Nitlapan. That's, as far as I know, is one of the institutions with the largest and most extensive experience in ecosystem finance, with more than, I would say, at least 20 years of experience with on that. And but I leave Pedro to give us his view on the financial instrument to finance inclusive biodiversity conservation from the point of view of the Rural Development Center, as well as the largest microfinance institution in Nicaragua. If we can see also the screen at the same time while we see Pedro, that would be fantastic. Thank you. It's yours, the floor, Pedro. Microphone, you need to open the micro.
Okay.
Jets.
Now you can hear me, pardon me.
Yes, can you come nearer to the micro as well, or speak louder? Thanks.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay.
Better, yes, thank you.
Okay. World where all diversity is under risk. And it's been that way for 40 years. And that's why we have so many voices speaking for diversity of all types. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity loss in the microfinance sector itself. And that has to do with the type of changes to stop that diversity loss. We need more work like the Jeff is doing and like Paribas is doing. I believe that microfinance has an incredibly important role to play in the global change of biodiversity. But the real challenge is how to create more assays, which was a great presentation. Well, the FDL, we have 29 years experience in green microfinance. We've done 99,000 green loans with some technical assistance. We put out $140 million of these green loans. We've experimented for 20 years with the World Bank, Jeff, the IADB, and the Central American Regional Bank in this. And recently, the World Bank did a study of us, and they found that really only 25% of our loans were really had green impact. And that's very important, right? It doesn't mean that $105 million went down the tubes. No, change happened. But we're talking about a world in which we now have to work on quality, okay? So let me just go on the screen now. Out of all that experimentation, especially through a project called Biocambio and or Cambio, and we did this, and Avril was actually with us when we did Ecomicro, and it was through Ecomicro that we finally put what we consider to be what we do together. And let me explain that. What we do is Green Microfinance Plus. And that means combining financial, non-financial, and territorial services. The non-financial services you can see there on your left, you have to do co-produced research with clients on green alternatives in their farms. This is a crucial area. You have to have green technical assistance based on the co-produced research you've done with your clients. And then you have to have territorial services. And we're just starting this. What we've done is coordination with other actors and diploma programs on ecosystems for multi-actors. Those are the non-financial services. I think there's a balance, right? Of course, both Paribas and the Jeff really have to deal with the financial products, and we'll tell you what we've done with the financial products, right? The first thing is that we've discovered is that the products have to be co-produced with the clients. That is, it's a world in which the microfinance institution can't develop its own financial product. It has to develop a product with the clients, and in the midst of that, they have to set both their financial and their green goals, right? So this idea of actually participation in the product is crucial. The second thing we've done is bio awards, payment for ecological services, some people say. Our average is about 8% of the loan goes in biodiversity rewards. And the final instrument, which we really believe in, which is a winner, which banks don't like to hear about, but it works. If they meet their green goals, right, we give a 25% reduction in interest rates. This is a product from the BRI in Indonesia, a wonderful public bank who lowered their risk tremendously with this instrument. So when we're talking about lowering risk, and this is very important, I think this instrument of reducing interest rates for BRI does it just for paying the loan. We do it for actually making the green goal. Okay. The other things we'd say on this is it's very hard to do this if you don't have a lot of experience and you don't have a lot of size. In fact, when we go into country risk, and our country in Nicaragua has been at very high country risk for years, it's hard to go forward with microfinance, right? Because what we've had to do, we have over the years, over 20 years, we put in about 22% of all our profits into subsidies for green finance. Well, when the country falls apart, we don't have earnings in some years, and this is a real problem. And David's research has shown this, right? That it is the stronger institutions, the more stable institutions that can actually go forward with green microfinance. But as we heard from Ricardo today, it's not just the larger ones. They are out there. There is a market here. Just a brief introduction, I don't know how much time I have. What does FDL and Meet Le Pan aim to do in the future? To put it very simply, we want to take the focus off loans to micro entrepreneurs. That has been microfinance since it began, and putting the micro entrepreneur in the spotlight. We're saying we have to take the spotlight off enterprise to deal with climate warming, to deal with biodiversity loss. We have to do that. And that means we have to begin to design with people in the ecosystems green finance plus products explicitly for the ecosystem, right? I'll come back to this later, but I think this really represents a second revolution in microfinance. Of course, the first was how we lowered the cost of transaction. That was the miracle of microfinance. But if we're going to do something about climate warming, if we're going to do something about biodiversity loss, we're really going to have a revolution in microfinance. And I think, you know, some of the things that Ricardo said are, that's what's happening. We have to massify the really wonderful small experiences out there. Okay, I'm going to stop now. I'm probably over time.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. That was really enlightening, and I think the call for a new way to see how to finance ecosystem, really financing directly ecosystem, is very inspiring, and I think it's something we should start looking at that and not just say we do a loan that is biodiversity. So thanks to opening the door for this innovation. Maybe we take a couple of inputs from the floor, from the audience, as well as you have question and answer to our panel before going to the second question, that is what is missing to make that happening. Any questions? Please.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you all for the presentations. My name is Eveline Trines from Tropenbos International, and I've got two questions, one for Alex and one for Pedro, if I may. Alex, yesterday we did a presentation, we put up some statistics about who is actually producing the world food for us, and we come to over 410 million family farms with an area smaller than 1 hectare. And I was wondering how BNP Paribas deals with ticket sizes and reaching those land users. And then the question to Pedro is about the 25% reduction on interest if you achieve your green goals. Isn't there then a sort of an intrinsic motivation for a bank not to achieve the green goals together with their clients because they can charge less interest? Thank you.
Please.
So Pedro, I'll start if you don't mind. So of course it's a very good question because let's say conventional financial institutions are not very good at transacting on small ticket size. That's why we realize, to what extent inclusive finance is actually critical, in this financial value chain, what we call the financial value chain. Who are the actors, the players that are in close contact with those smallholder farmers? These are not traditional banks, that's for sure. These are maybe, fintechs in very rural area, not so much. But you've got those, traditional inclusive finance, microfinance institutions that are, that have historically, this experience. And what we are trying to do is, of course, refinancing them and refinance their portfolio. We'll go into more detail into with the second question, but with asking more question about what is actually being refinanced. So, there is this question of, traceability, of transparency, which is a bit new in the sector, but most of the investors are going to be requiring more and more information as to, the purposes of the debt that, they are going to that they are, disbursing to those institutions. So the answer to the question is, using the intermediaries that are actually, in direct contact with those end beneficiaries that are so important for, food security and for the food sovereignty.
Thank you, Lex. Pedro, please.
Okay, about reducing interest rates. About 38 years ago, even like 45 years ago, people said you can't make small loans. The costs of transaction are way too high. Along came Grameen and a lot of us way back then, and we started to do this. And then all of a sudden, it got so good that the commercial banks themselves actually got into making small loans, right? So that's what we talked about as the first revolution. So, our banking systems are creative. I mean, they are creative, they will respond, right? What I would say is that, when you talk about all the small farmers in the world, and, all of that, I mean, also, they said you couldn't do agricultural finance. And we actually proved in our first 10 years that the cost of transaction for financing small producers, very tiny producers in agriculture, were less risky than financing in the city. How about that? It depends what you do with it, right? And now what we do when we go after to be inclusive, you know what we do? We specifically target people who are not creditworthy. That's how we do inclusivity. Of course, we do this, you know, together in both our trust funds linked with the microfinance, but we go after people who are not creditworthy. Now that we're doing that because guess what? They are not that risky. This is the truth about the opening for what inclusivity really means. You know, the poorest of the poor, who you would say, oh, they pay. And during years when we don't have major crises in the country, they actually their level of portfolio risk is lower than other people. So I mean, there's a world out there. A very complicated answer, sorry, but great question.
So thanks a lot. The video is a bit shaking, but I think we got the message. And also, if you see on the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group, there is a nice citation from Peter that's saying green is more resilient. That example, it's been happening during the crisis. I mean, Nicaragua has a crisis every 2-3 years. So, and they clearly observe how more resilient is the green and agri portfolio. Voila. So for the time limitation, I move forward for the next question. The next question is about what is missing to finance inclusive biodiversity conservation. Because if you will have all the instruments, we will just need to implement them. We will hear first from Avril. The floor is yours, Avril.
Thank you. So what is missing? I think a whole myriad of things are missing, but we need to prioritize in order to move forward. What I would say is that there is no track record available for assessing risk for these institutions. Whenever we talk about changing agricultural ways of doing or being, in a way, even if it's more resilient in the long term, in the short term, we face what we call kind of the valley of death of no cash flow, no repayment. And what we need is track record. What we need is tool to measure the environmental impact, but also to demonstrate the strength of the portfolio while achieving environmental and nature positive impacts. And again, what we need is a lot of, I would say, concessional finance to help these institutions move toward that type of financing and products at scale, because it's in a way what we've seen in these various pilots that we've done throughout the world. And I was there, as Pedro mentioned, when we started with Ecomicro and other green microfinance initiatives 10 to 15 years ago. The pioneer was Grameen, but then we all followed in one way or the other. Is that it's very hard to be mainstreamed at scale by the institutions that have tried it. And one of the reasons is because as the challenges increase from the environmental perspective, the risks that you measured 5 years ago or 10 years ago are not the ones that we're going to face in 5, 10, or 15 years. And if we're changing the agricultural patterns, we do need patient capital. We do need de-risking for these institutions to move forward. So I would say, uh, concessional blended finance, or even, when we're saying reducing interest rates or incentives, it needs to be incentives at institutional level, right? That the MFIs will make money out of this, line of products. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Avril, for your input on the missing items. I will then go with the same question from the perspective of Alex. Thanks, Alex, for your input.
So what is missing is exactly what Avril said. What is missing is an investable market today. So even if you would have a lot of fund, and we know that today liquidity on the global markets and all on all economies is not something which is missing. What is missing is the capacity for the market to absorb them in a in a smart, in a smart way. Not I don't mean smart in a technology savvy way, but in a way that is actually positive for biodiversity conservation and for the climate. So what I would identify as the way to make this market more investable. I already referred to transparency and traceability. Today investors are looking for more transparency, and they are willing to pay for it, especially if this transparency and traceability comes with increased resilience. So resilience is of course a very important concept. It's very much based on adaptation, which is the main challenge that we need to tackle right now. Resilience is what is seen as the positive externalities that comes with an investment or a financing decision. So if you manage to actually value these positive externalities, then it makes your reward versus risk balance. It tilts this risk and reward balance, and it offers you the possibility to actually value better what are the funds that you are implementing for such a positive product. So transparency, of course, and then capacity. So capacity means are today's actor, which are the most vulnerable to climate change, able to identify what is actually helping them to be more resilient or not. It can be the case, but it's not always the case. As a financial institution, what we are interested in is to build capacity in the financial value chain. So it means for the financial intermediaries, are they able to identify the practices that are actually positive for biodiversity conservation or for climate change or not. So of course it means that you need to train them, you need to make them aware of the climate risk which is embedded in their portfolio, because of course this climate risk will have a direct effect on your own risk. You are refinancing institutions that have climate risk in their portfolio, so of course you should be aware of it. Capacity building at investees level, but also at investor level. So capacity building in our own institutions. Are we able to better incorporate this climate and biodiversity erosion risk today? I don't think so. So there are a lot of effort for the industry to be a little bit more aware of it, and we hope that the regulation is going to help the financial sector to actually accelerate this awareness.
Thanks a lot, Alex, for your input on the topic of missing elements. Pedro, your voice. Please mind the time. I know you have a long list of missing things.
Okay. What is really missing, is mitigating diversity loss in microfinance. 90% of microfinance is in the cities, right? Or in rural commons. When we look at transparency, we don't even know what the levels of agricultural financing are in the industry. We know they're very low, right? And the fact is, we can't really deal with biodiversity loss from the cities, right? I mean, so this is crucial that microfinance makes a shift to agriculture, and that can happen if people sitting in the decision chairs of the second and third tier financiers really thought what Avril and what Alexandre is talking about. They're just incredible. They're very advanced. If we could put that in place, there'd be nothing missing. I want to try to tell why is missing an understanding of why a second microfinance revolution is needed. Our CEO in 2017 said, you know, even though Nicaragua has more agricultural finance than anyone, all 25 of us who are financing in the countryside, we don't get to more than 17% of the producers. What does that mean? It means that as 17% become more resilient, we still have, you know, another 83% continuing to destroy biodiversity. So there has to be a way of taking off the focus on the entrepreneur and moving to the moving into looking at the whole system, the whole system. So now we have to that, but that means we have to also do something about oh, how do I
You're not allowed to take help from home, to answer to your question.
I can't. I got it. Okay. So what we're saying then is we have for global warming and for biodiversity loss, and those are huge things because they affect us. It's like we have to, on a local level, we have to deal with the whole ecosystem in our financing, but on the global level, we need policy architectures that work. Okay, how to fill these huge extinction risk vacuums, right? So, you know, we talk about the risk of our loans and everything, but we all know that we're facing extinction risk. And how can we do that? And I think the most important thing that we have to say is we can't do it alone. And not only can't we do it alone, but we need fine tuning among multiple actors, right? I do think between the three tiers of uh, financiers, the first, second, and third tiers, I do think that we are beginning to talk, but we're not fine tuning yet, right? Finally, we need also fine tuning between microfinance and public policy. That's a huge task, but it is also crucial, right? And then we need fine tuning between entrepreneurs, the civil society, and multilateral policymakers. So fine tuning really means we have to spend a lot of time together because we're not going to be able to do this by ourselves. You know, if we stop using any petroleum-based energy on this planet, you know, the global warming, the temperature is not going to go down. It's going to stay where it is right now for 100 years. The same is true of what's going on with biodiversity loss. So we're going to have to begin fine-tuning, spending more time together. I'll stop.
Thank you, Peter. So I just take 1 minute to say 2 words of what we as a Just Institute aim to do to support this fine-tuning, as well as coordination among actors. Some of you heard about that. So I'm representing here as director of the Just Institute. Just stay for Just Sustainability Transitions, and is an institute that basically has one target, is to support each stakeholder that want to engage to move their finance toward biodiversity, climate, and inclusive positive. We do that by being a non-for-profit entity and a social business based on the member, independent, of course, trying to build bridges between private and public, inclusive and conventional. Finance, the only thing I want to say 2 words due to the lack of time and to engage everyone. The Just Institute is basically doing 3 pragmatic things. One is trying to support the sector to improve traceability of investment and transparency. So what are financial intermediary institutions, being microfinance, cooperative, fintech, local banks, actually financing through the value chain or directly to smallholder, and which one of this financing can be classified to support climate resilience is biodiversity conservation while including population, and we aim to do that and certify those. Second, we are going to provide ongoing training and capacity building to field officer and management, basically expanding what Ricardo has been explaining with ACI. So we are trying to massify the approach of MEBA biodiversity by giving practical tools to all loan officers on how to include climate risk and biodiversity risk into their assessment, and having some basic tool to distinguish practices like a nature-based solution that can reduce biodiversity erosion and compensate for climate change. And last but not least, we'll be working with various actors, private and public, to try to shape their products and have financial and eventually non-financial products that has better condition if they support improvement in terms of resiliency to climate change and biodiversity conservation. So one of that, for example, are sustainability-linked loans with reduced interest rate if your investees are improving into biodiversity conservation. Of course, we do not do that alone. We do in partnerships. The GICSF has been launched originally by the Grooup BNPP Paribas and the Global Environmental Facilities through 2 projects that we are going to do together also with the IFAD and the Fondation Grameen Crigol here present. So we'll have activity soon on piloting this concept in 5 countries in Central America and, in Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. One about analysis and certification, you see here the product, and the other about structuring product sustainability-linked loans to reward the institution that can move forward into the progress in reducing erosion of biodiversity. So, as said, it's not a private entity, it's not privatizing the sector, it's rather the reverse. So we are just the beginning, so we can just do that together, it's member-based. So if any one of you feel motivated to join the effort, the doors are wide open. I would like to close with one call that was a proposal originally by Pedro. We had another webinar 1 month and a half ago on the Club de la Microfinance de Paris about biodiversity, inclusive finance, and there Pedro came with, I think, a nice idea to launch a joint statement on biodiversity, inclusive finance. It means what do we mean? And then eventually in the future have a pledge of what do we want to do. So we will try to shape this message with the speaker here present. If someone wants to join, and shape it, please just contact us. And interesting things will be to have this joint statement somehow to be delivered at the COP Biodiversity. As I've already said, there will be a COP Biodiversity where some of us will be present, so that we have the possibility eventually to have a statement from the inclusive finance sector there. That will be very, very cool, I think, to start the movement. Voila, before closing, we are a bit late in time, but if there are questions or inputs from things you do, please just shoot it and we can take a round. Please don't be shy, don't be too tired. There will be drink later on at the European Investment Bank after 1 hour and a half of presentation of projects, so still you need to be resilient, please. Oh, we have a question. Please go ahead.
Hello. I want to touch base in just the joke you mentioned.
Can you please introduce yourself?
Sorry?
Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry. I'm Alejandro Vázquez. I'm working for the FCCF fund. And so we work on forestry regeneration projects. And my question is a little bit related to the small joke you mentioned about resilience, and I think Alexandre as well mentioned something about if we can quantify and monetize resilience into the financial products. I still have, after this very interesting discussion, where are we going in terms of how we can monetize the benefits that biodiversity brings, that can be then translated into the financial markets and private investors that can see that more, let's say, monetized rather than externality that is sometimes quantified.
Maybe I take first, and then I have around with everyone. Avril, probably you want to as well answer. I think, first of all, considering what we discussed at the beginning of how essential is biodiversity, is diversity of life, so everything we are here, we should do that because we know it's good to do, first of all, because it's really life, it's beyond being euro and US dollar. So that means there is an intrinsic value into biodiversity that probably has no conversion into our money. Nevertheless, part of monetization is what will allow to have a marginal shift to move in that direction. So why do I say that? Because it will be very difficult to monetize, even if it will be possible and visible, biodiversity. It's a complex topic. What I think we should do, at least what we will try to do into the Just Institute, to do that step by step. It is easily to recognize or relatively easy to recognize investment that will more probably favor biodiversity conservation against the one that will not do. Agroforestry against monoculture, just to make a stupid example. And there, the one that are moving part of their implementation of their practices toward a list of practices that are supposed to support biodiversity, they should be rewarded and so monetized locally with a decrease in interest rate, better technical assistance, etc. And then slowly we will learn how to do, and we'll be able to quantify and eventually have a price as to carbon. But I think it's a step by step, so we cannot wait until we have a good equivalent to carbon market that still is not working, by the way, as we would please, to then move forward because we are in the middle of a sick extinction. So I think it's a mix of two. Maybe Avril, if you want to say something, and then I don't know, Alex or Pedro.
Thank you, Alejandro, for the question. The truth is that we haven't figured out yet how to monetize it because the definition of biodiversity impact or nature of positive investments is still in the making. As we are all very hopeful about what nature-related financial disclosures is going to deliver next year because they focus not only on risks but on opportunities. And therefore, I think once we define what we mean, then there's a potential for monetization. Without a unit of measurement, it's very hard. That said, what I can share with you is what we're seeing as a proxy and how the market is moving as a proxy. We are seeing more and more that biodiversity benefits in terms of are monetized in terms of carbon. Like we are seeing, blue carbon projects. We're also seeing lately increased conversations about how sovereigns can achieve their NDCs, so national determined contributions for climate, but taking into account their natural capital, because the natural capital do sink carbon and at the same time has biodiversity benefits. So there is a proxy there being approached, and we see that increased relationship between biodiversity and carbon credit. And there is also discussion about creation of, excuse me, I said yes, and biodiversity. And we're seeing also discussion about biodiversity credits. I was getting ahead of myself. Although, again, until we do not have an agreed unit and an agreed way of measuring, it will be very hard to have a commonly accepted value for one credit of biodiversity. So I would say that that's how we're seeing the proxies, through carbon markets or through the carbon equivalent. And now countries are starting to look at their natural capital assessments to then finance their climate uh, pledges through, blue carbon and other types of carbon, including red plus type of projects that they've done in the past. This is a proxy. It's not perfect, but it's just that we haven't figured out yet how to measure biodiversity impacts in a commonly accepted and therefore way, and therefore monetization is hard, to create a market without that standardization. That's what I would bring to the conversation.
And just to add a few sentences on that, of course, we would like to put a price on biodiversity. We are far from there, but if we do so, then we'll realize, how critical, the work of those, smallholder farmers is, and we'll be able, of course, to reward them against the, ecosystem services that they provide. And it's exactly, the same idea that Pedro mentioned, which is we should start, financing ecosystem. So we are not financing anymore. I mean, the human being is the enabler of those ecosystem services, because of course we will be the first beneficiary of those services. Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, the CEO of the GEF, is talking about the cost of inaction, of course. So these are your negative externalities. So we always have to keep in mind the fact that you need to look at both sides of the picture. Of course, your positive externalities, but the negative ones are maybe the one which are easiest to start with, and we are much more advanced today, from a theoretical point of view, to know, which one are the practices that are, most detrimental, to biodiversity or to, contributing to climate change.
Thanks a lot. We are late on time. If there is any pressing things, you tell me. We can take another question. If not, we close. Anyone that want to raise their hands, or we're fine? I think everyone want to go to take, I don't know if there is, it's not already cocktail, but almost. Voila, so we will, thank you for your participation. It's like a new topic, but we are already too late to tackle that, so we need to move it forward. Please join the transition with us. We really have various people here in the audience. We heard experiences from you. I think we're pretty aligned. We can just achieve that if we do together. So I look forward to further discuss with you and the speakers during the break, for the ones that are present here, and if not, remotely. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Pedro, for your participation and so wise and so rich, input from such a long history of working on ecosystem. Thanks a lot, Avril, for such a deep view on the, the tools that you have been monitoring and you're looking through to develop into the GEF, and what you see as a broad view, what is missing and what is coming up. Thanks, Alex, for the private sector banking view on how a private large bank can engage in biodiversity conservation. And thanks a lot, of course, to Ricardo, that I think is online, and so honestly, he did a great job to shoot all the video in English, so I know there was a long elaboration. So I mean, we need to really thank him to share this and to engage in this transition with such a small institution, but such engage, and how it can be done, and if I can do it, why we cannot do all together by learning from him. Thanks a lot. We see you later.